The Bishop of Leicester, the Right Reverend Tim Stevens, retires this summer after 16 years. During that time, his many roles have included convener of the bishops in the House of Lords and visiting professor at De Montfort University.
So today we're here to talk about your illustrious career as a bishop. What do you think of when you look back on your 16 years in Leicester?
Well, most of all, I suppose I think it's been a great privilege to be at the heart of so many different worlds. Leicester is a very religiously diverse city set in the heart of Middle England countryside, so being close to other faiths, to the universities, to schools, to business, to the rural agricultural world, and trying to see ways in which the church can serve those worlds and speak into those worlds, that's been the greatest privilege. But what we've also, I think, been able to do in the time I've been there is to build the institutions of the diocese around the cathedral in ways that make it very clear that even though the number of Muslims and Hindus and Sikhs are growing all the time in Leicester, and even though we want to work closely with them, the Church of England and the Christian community is not going away. So I think the Christian community is much more visible and has a greater sense of permanence in Leicester than perhaps it did when I arrived, and I think that's the thing I'm most thankful for.
What sort of a challenge was it for you in trying to bring those faiths together when you arrived?
Well, I arrived just before the millennium, and when I was installed in the cathedral, we signed an agreement with the faith leaders of Leicester in the cathedral in front of everyone who was there to do everything we could to work together. I think in some ways we've achieved that. We had the 9/11 disaster early in this century, the Iraq War, the 7/7 bombings in London, the whole series of threats to cohesion. And on each occasion, we came out publicly together, we stood together, we prayed together, and we worked with the police and with local government and others to show that we were absolutely determined not to let these events divide us from each other. There are still enormous challenges. You know, what's going on in the Middle East now reverberates through a city like Leicester. It makes many people in the Muslim community very, very nervous. They feel under some threat. So does parts of the Jewish community. This is work that will have to go on. Whoever follows me at Leicester, I'm sure, will be involved in it. But it's been one of the great joys and satisfactions of being the bishop, working with people who come to God differently from the way we come, but live with a vivid sense of God in their lives. A city like Leicester, global events are local events. They affect relationships between communities. And the bishop really is seen as the bishop of the whole community. People speak about our bishop, Muslims and Sikhs and Hindus do that. So that's been a real privilege to do what we can to deepen trust, confidence and communication between these communities through really challenging times.
I want to talk about something else that the cathedral was really involved in, which was the Richard III commemorations. But before we go there, can you just explain, I understand that when you got your job, Richard III was sort of predicted.
Well, when I was asked to be the Bishop of Leicester, I saw the appointment secretary from Downing Street, and he said, I think you'll have some challenges with the cathedral. It's a small parish church, it's not very well resourced. You need to think about how you can develop it. He said, one thing you might do is think about finding a relic. He said this tongue-in-cheek, but 15 years later we managed to bury Richard III in the cathedral, and the effect has been electrifying. So we've more than quadrupled the number of visitors. We've had 120 media outlets attending on the reinterment, and it's had a huge effect on the morale of the city. And it's great to be leaving with the cathedral doing really well and right at the heart of the city's attention.
And what did that do to bringing community together again? Because it really, I came up and it really was right at the heart.
It was buzzing. So we were in March, and about 70,000 people came out onto the streets to see the remains brought into the cathedral. 25,000 queued to see the coffin. And we had a very strong partnership with the city and the county, the universities and others to lay on these events. That partnership is still in place. And I think that's something the church can do really well, bring different parties together around a common cause. I think there's real opportunities to build on all that in Leicester in the years ahead now.
Other achievements that you've had include women bishops and getting that through. What are your reflections on your time in helping to achieve that?
Well, when I first got to Leicester, we had a vacancy for the role of what was then called the provost of the cathedral, now the dean. And we appointed the first woman provost of the cathedral, Vivian Fall, who's now Dean of York. That was seen as a little bit of a sort of mould breaker at the time. But all my ministry, I've wanted to see women in positions of leadership in the church. When I was first ordained, I joined the movement for the ordination of women. Right at the end of my time, 40 years later, the first woman diocesan bishop is just about to be ordained, and she will take my seat in the House of Lords when I leave. I'm delighted about that. I just wish we'd have done it 10 years earlier, and we could have had a House of Bishops with the voice of bishops speaking into it. We really need that. And the more women bishops come onto the bench, I think the healthier and the more sensible the church will be.
What voice do you think they'll add?
Well, I hesitate to characterise what they might do, because I think we have to discover what they will add. But I think many of the procedures and many of the rather tortuous ways we've had to find our way through decisions really need to be challenged. And I hope that the women will challenge some of these and say, actually, the presentation of the gospel to the nation is urgent. We cannot let it constantly get mired in complicated political and synodical processes inside the church. Those are not the things that are going to lead to the reform and the renewal of the church going forward. And I think that the women that I know, who are extremely effective parish priests, archdeacons and deans, understand that. They bring a kind of immediacy and sometimes an impatience with process that I think we need.
What are you going to miss?
I'm going to miss lots of the people that I've worked with, people I've got really fond of, people who've become friends, and the habits of being a bishop, where there's so much variety, so many different things happening every day. It's almost intoxicating, probably addictive. I've got to break some of those habits and learn to live a slower, stiller, more contemplative life. But there are any number of events, special moments, special encounters, when suddenly God's love and God's richness has kind of burst upon me. And those are the moments I will always treasure and always be really, really thankful for.
When you look back on Leicester, what would you say, maybe not the big occasions, but what were the other highlights? What will you take away with you and contemplate on?
There will be moments in public worship, sometimes in remote village churches, sometimes in on the outer estates or in the inner cities, where suddenly things have come to life, and I've felt surrounded by people who absolutely understand the presence of Jesus Christ. And they come unexpectedly. A bishop goes around the diocese Sunday by Sunday. Not every experience lights us up. And then occasionally, and often where you least expect it, something absolutely magical happens. Those will be some of the moments I will remember, but also the opportunities to move across the boundary between church and society. So moments in our 3 universities which have been really stimulating and interesting, times in our schools, times in conversations with the commercial and industrial community, and in conversations with other faiths. I think that's what I've most treasured. To be a bishop is to be given a kind of travel card around a region, and extraordinarily almost every door opens when you push at it. That's been such a privilege, and one that I think has been God's gift to me over all these years.
What are you looking forward to?
I'm looking forward to more time to think. I'm looking forward to getting fit. I'm looking forward to building a garden and making my golf slightly less embarrassing than it is at the moment. And I'm looking forward to doing some serious fundraising for cancer research. Those are the things that will occupy me in the first year. Plus, I have to say, 4 lecture cruises around the world for which I have to write some talks. All those things will be give me plenty to do for the next year or two.